Last year was the worst year in Africa, which saw the highest number of elephants and rhinos being poached.
This is a full-scale assault on the wildlife resources of Africa. It's time for a redoubled effort to control that problem.
They come in with rifles, AKs, to chop off the horn and run out with it. That's what they normally do. It's very, very sad.
When these animals are being killed, illegally killed for illicit trade, there is a small group of people who are profiting at the expense of the many, at the expense of local communities. They are depriving them of potential future opportunities for pursuing legitimate development operations. One of the disturbing trends that has been apparent is the increasing involvement of organised crime, of rebel militia groups, and on occasions even rogue elements of the military.
Nous avons un exemple, au nord Gabon, nous avions 6000 trafiquants, orpailleurs illégaux qui en même temps braconnaient, et c'était une ville dans la ville. On était dans l'État, il y avait du trafic, bien sûr, de l'or, du trafic d'ivoire, du trafic d'hommes, du trafic de drogue, du trafic d'armes. Donc l'ANP ne pouvait rien, l'agence de l'épargne ne pouvait rien, il a donc fallu que l'État intervienne pour mettre l'armée pour faire revenir la loi dans cette zone de non-droit.
These poaching enterprises undermine the very security and economies of the countries in which they're operating.
I strongly believe that key to stopping extinction of endangered species is getting full government commitment and political will.
There is no way we will win this fight if we're relying exclusively upon wildlife agencies or environment agencies. The institutions that have the direct mandate here have come together to form what's called the International Consortium on Combating Wildlife Crime. This is the CITES Secretariat, Interpol, UN Office of Drugs and Crime, World Customs Organization and World Bank.
It's out of a shared recognition that the development and sustainability have to come together, and that we have to find a way to work together to conserve the resources of Africa to support its future development.
They're recognising the seriousness of this issue, they're recognising the implications for local people, for economies, for security, and they're starting to invest. That's very, very positive.
We're looking for finance ministers, for heads of state to step up and say, we're serious about bringing this problem under control, and we're going to invest in the resources it takes for law enforcement, for prosecution, for customs control, to actually end wildlife poaching in this region.
The elephants, the rhinos, and the other animals are part of our global heritage. They can't ask you themselves, so we are doing it for them and for ourselves. Please sign the Declaration on Illegal Wildlife Trafficking. Ask your government to give it full support. But you too can do something. If you're about to buy ivory, or horn, or some other animal part, think again. Do you really want to be part of this slaughter?
Thank you for joining us on Gabon News Television, Sahara Media, and Radio Méditerranée Internationale. We're honored to have in our studios today our guest, Mr. Jim Leape, President of the World Wildlife Fund. So today we will go back on the conference that we had, that we saw previously on during the convention today. So first, could you please briefly introduce your institution to our viewers, please?
Sure, thank you. It's good to be here. WWF is one of the world's largest conservation organizations. We've been around since 1961. We work in about 100 countries, working with local partners to save wildlife in endangered places.
Mm-hmm. So the theme of this annual meetings is Africa's structural transformation. What role does the WWF intend to play in Africa's structural transformation?
Well, one of the interesting things about this meeting is that President Kaberuka, President of the African Development Bank, has made it clear over the last couple of years that he sees the poaching crisis that's sweeping across Africa as a fundamental threat to the security and future economic prosperity of the continent. And so he sees it as an issue that ought to be at the center of these kinds of development discussions. And that's what brings us here, is the chance to meet with finance ministers and others, focus on how do we bring sustainability into the heart of the development equation in Africa, and in that context, how can we help come to grips with the challenge of poaching?
Yeah, as you mentioned, poaching is really one of the biggest problems plaguing Africa at the moment, causing security problems and frontier problems. But there was recently a new Marrakesh declaration. Could you please extend more on this subject, please?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we have put together for this meeting with President Kaberuka and the bank is a proposed Marrakesh declaration, which asks heads of state to commit their governments to taking a series of concrete actions to bring the poaching crisis under control. And that's about beefing up enforcement capacity on the grounds, those who can make the arrests of poachers who are killing wildlife, but also all the way through up through the chain, making sure that the judicial system is stronger, that penalties are stiffer, that customs organizations have the equipment they need, the capacity they need to control the trade. And it's that set of commitments that offers the promise, at least, that this problem can be brought under control. And it's being launched from here.
Okay. And does this declaration concern just one region or the whole of Africa?
Well, the problem has become particularly acute, the poaching crisis in Central Africa over the last couple of years, but it is a problem which afflicts almost every country on the continent. And so this is a declaration we're asking all heads of state to sign.
Yes. Talking about heads of state, we noticed that there was one present during the meeting, President Ali Bongo Ondimba, who has been very active on the environmental front and who has been pushing forward policies in Gabon to push back the poaching issue. So what role does the WWF play in enforcing policies or reforms? Or is it just a consultant role, or what role?
Well, let me first say, President Bongo has been a critically important leader on this issue in Africa and globally. And he was a very compelling speaker tonight, and I think bringing home to people that he was speaking not just for Gabon, but for many of his fellow heads of state across the continent. And that's a very important leadership role. WWF works with governments like the government of Gabon and other governments across the region, and with communities to help them come to grips with the poaching crisis. So we provide technical support and training for anti-poaching guards. We provide training and support for prosecutors and the judicial system. We help customs offices do what it takes to get the trade under control. So we are there as an advisor, as a supporter, as an instigator of action to deal with the poaching crisis.
And the role of NGOs in this program. In Gabon, for example, we have many local NGOs such as Conservation Justice, which helps lead investigations on the field and arrests. What kind of support does the WWF provide to such organizations?
Well, we work with many local partners in every country where we work, and our job is not to try and duplicate what others can do, but to support those who are playing important roles and find ways to complement their efforts. And that's, of course, how all of us need to get things done.
Yes. So I have heard it said that conservation without finance is just conversation.
Yes.
So has there been a budget set aside for this particular program? And if so, could we have some numbers, for example?
There is funding available from various sources for work on poaching. But I think most important in this meeting is the recognition that this is an issue that deserves the attention of finance ministers, not just environment ministers, and that finance ministers and their heads of state need to recognize that the poaching crisis is in fact a threat to the issues they're most worried about, to the future development and security of their country. And it's from that recognition that resources need to flow.
Yeah. So the African Bank, the World Wildlife Fund, and Gabon are in this together.
We are very much in this together.
So what are your hopes and the objectives for the future?
Well, I mean, my hope, and I think President Bongo said it well tonight, is that we can spread the recognition that this is an issue of fundamental importance for every country in the African continent. And through that recognition, actually begin to mobilize the kinds of actions it takes to bring illegal wildlife trade under control. To make sure that if a criminal pursues wildlife crime, he or she will be caught and punished.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for having been with us on Gabon News, Sahara Media, and Radio Méditerranée Internationale. Please tune in with us for next time on our next show. Thank you.